Thank you very much, Daniel. And it is a little bit sad that Ule can't be with us. And I thought we should start off, just in case Ule's watching on the live stream, by saying thank you to him and wishing him a speedy recovery. Okay, I hope I can, in some small way, make up for the missing Ule with this talk entitled Why Nerds Aren't Heard, 7 Ways That Geeks Sabotage Their Own Presentations and What to Do About it. And by the way, if you'd like to tweet, there's my Twitter handle there at the bottom, at @dduffet. And what I would like to do, if it's okay with you, I want to talk about the problem as I see it in the world of nerd communications. And I don't mean at a technical conference like this, because I think these are special events. What I'm talking about is when technical people try and communicate with non-technical people. That's the area that I want to focus on. So I want to identify the problem. I want to talk about why nerds need to be heard by non-technical audiences. Then look at the 7 ways geeks sabotage their own presentations. And lastly, look at some protocols that I've boiled them down to and a magic factory. In fact, the protocols might even come up a little bit earlier in the presentation. Anyway, how does that sound? Is that okay? Yes. I have your agreement. In that case, let's proceed. I do have a secret participation weapon. Jared, if you could stand up for a moment. And Mike Mavroudis. Yes, they are armed with chocolates. Jared is armed with the Twix. That's the smooth one, like Jared. And Mike is armed with the Lion Bar. It's kind of smooth, but a little bit crunchy as well, like Mike. And so as we go through the presentation, if people ask questions or answer questions, they may well get the chance to have chocolate launched at them by one of these fine people. Okay, let's move on and see what we're going to talk about. So here's the problem. The problem is that as geeks, you know, we get to sit in the darkened corner of the office. We get to wear the T-shirts with the interesting phrases on. This one's hard to read, but it says, "I'm not slacking off, my code's compiling." But, you know, there's all sorts of different T-shirts that people get to wear, and you probably get to eat pizza once a month as well. However, round the corner, there's the sales guy. Now, I know that Ron Burgundy is more of an anchor man than a sales guy, but you get the picture. And, you know, he's there with his expense account, his large company car, and all that kind of stuff. And having worked in technical companies over the last 20 or 30 years, I started thinking to myself, well, hang on a minute. Who makes and supports this stuff? It's the geeks, isn't it? The geeks make and support this stuff. And yet, sadly, they are not as well looked after as the salespeople and the marketing people. And I'm not here to say that sales and marketing people should be paid any less. Far from it. You know, they've got their own skill sets. But what I am here to say is that I want to help geeks be more, do more, and therefore have more. In other words, I want geeks to get more of the good stuff in life and more of the good stuff in their careers. Does that sound like a worthy aim? Yeah. Torry put his hand up. Torry, Lion Bar or Twix? Twix. Okay. Jared, could you give that man a Twix, please? Thank you very much. Okay, good. So, a conference like this is great, but as we all know, when we get out of conferences like this, we have to go and give presentations sometimes to less technical audiences. It's very important, though, because the presentations to less technical audiences could involve getting a job. A lot of jobs involve giving a presentation these days to a less than technical audience. Could be showing your non-tech colleagues at work or in the industry what you do. It could be sales presentations, because after all, stuff needs to get sold, right? Or it could be the all-important attracting funding. Maybe it's an IPO. Maybe you're selling your company. But all of these need to, they demand, actually, presentations that are good in front of non-technical audiences. Now, let me ask a quick question. Has anybody ever seen a bad presentation, or maybe even given a bad presentation? Quite a few people. Okay, every hand. I'm afraid I can't give chocolate to every single person in the audience. And as I ask you to think about what was bad about it, certain things probably come to your mind. It might be that the guy didn't know what he was talking about. It might be that he was a bit uneasy, or it might be that the girl did this or that. Has anybody seen some really excellent presentations? And maybe given us, yes. Now, all these hands were going up and down. Imagine if I was asking this question to a non-technical audience. They would also have seen some corkers, wouldn't they? They'd also have seen some great presentations. But at the same time, can you imagine that the answers in their heads about why the presentations were good and bad would be slightly different? That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. I'm talking about appealing to a less than technical audience. Okay, In short, if you're a geek and you can speak, there are many advantages for you. Not only more success in your career, but just in life in general, in getting jobs. And it's no mistake that I put a picture of a nice young lady up there as well, because geeks that can speak can be successful in very many areas of life. Okay, now, have you ever had this problem? You're trying to watch a video and you get the old buffering, don't you? What's that down to? A bad connection. Lion Bar or Twix?
Oh, Twix.
Twix. Oh, I see Jared's more popular with the Twix. It's a problem of connection, isn't it? And let me submit to you that geeks are not very good at making a connection with their audience. And just like when you want to watch a video, you want a good connection. You don't want some old DSL connection at 10 megabits per second and half up, do you? No. When you want to watch a video, you really want a nice fibre optic connection of 500 meg symmetrical or something like that for your enjoyment. So it is with a presentation to a non-technical audience. You need to open up the communication channel, not only make it very wide, but make it very bi-directional so that you can give your information as well as accepting back feedback about the way your presentation is going and questions and things like that from your audience. And so what I've done is I've set out to achieve this with a book called Let the Geek Speak. It's 7 power presenting protocols for nerds. And the protocols that I've boiled them down to is 7. They all begin with a P, handily. The first one is a purpose. Let me tell you something that happens when geeks are asked to do presentations. What they tend to do is sit down with their laptop and start hacking on Keynote or hacking on PowerPoint or hacking on Prezi, when actually that's not the presentation, is it? That's just a visual aid to the presentation. What I'm suggesting is that we need to give due consideration to the overall purpose of the presentation, why we're doing it. Is it a change of behaviour? Is it the adoption of a new work process? Is it from product knowledge? And actually, within the purpose, we identify 3 different stakeholders. The person that's asked you to give the presentation, or as I refer to them, the sponsor, the person that's asked. Then there's you making the presentation, and then there's the audience. And the key is to get all 3 of those parties tied into the same learning contract. That's what I do. Did you notice, by the way, at the beginning of the presentation, I showed you the agenda and I said, is that all right with you? Because I was getting you as the audience to buy in to what we were trying to achieve with the presentation. So that's the first thing. Then after purpose, we talk about planning. And there are many, many dimensions of planning. It's not just talking about the beginning, the middle, and the end. Although the beginning, the middle, and the end are important points. Now, as an audience, we all have an attention span. Where are the key points of our attention span? Anybody? Who said beginning there? That man's Twix or Lion Bar? Lion. Okay, Mike Mavraldis, can you feed that man a lion? Well, not feed him, but can you give him a Lion Bar, please? Thank you very much. That would be a whole different show, wouldn't it, if Mike was feeding people Lion Bars and stuff like that. Yes, the beginning. Yes, Matthew. The end. Twix or Lion Bar? Lion Bar from Mike Mavraldis. That's the free switch community and the asterisk community working together right there in harmony. Yes, okay. Yes, the beginning and the ending are both very, very important. In technical terms, primacy and recency are both very, very important. You remember your first day in the new job and your last day at that job, but you don't necessarily remember all the days between. Primacy and recency are very important. So when you're planning a presentation, you're going to put key information in the beginning and the ending, but it's not just that. Let me use an example of the 50 pictures of my really favourite holiday that I was going to show you. If I showed you 50 pictures of my holiday, you would probably remember the first one and the last one, but there's 3 more categories you would remember. You would remember links to what you already knew. So if there was a picture of a place that you had already been to, you would remember that. And that's why we use analogies to link in new concepts to what people already know. If 5 of the slides or 5 of the pictures across the series of 50 were all the same, you'd remember that because that's repetition. And repetition, as you know, is the mother of learning. Although it's a distant cousin of boredom, and so you have to be careful with repetition, not to go too far with it. And then here's the last one. If 50 of them were all landscape scenes, or 49 of them were all landscape scenes, but one of them was a pigeon riding a bike, that would be outstanding. And that would also be in your memory. So first and last, primacy and recency, links to what you already know, repetition and outstanding things. So when you're putting together a plan for a presentation, it's not just the beginning, the middle, and the end. There's other things that you need to talk about. Then there is preparation. And preparation goes well beyond planning. You've considered the purpose, you've considered the plan, but you've also got to consider preparation. And preparation is more than just thinking about the presentation. It might involve visiting the room in which you're going to deliver the presentation. It might involve talking to a number of sample audience members ahead of the presentation and thinking about the different things that you can do there. Do you think if you were giving a presentation to a collection of HR professionals, you would need to do it differently to a bunch of technical people? You probably would, and that's something you need to be aware of in your presentation. We all have learning styles. No time to actually go into the detail, but we all have individual learning styles. And the temptation for you as a presenter is to deliver something in your own learning style, when of course the audience might have a different learning style, or there might be a selection of learning styles. That's something we'd go into in the prepare protocol. And then there's practicing, the arch enemy of the geek presentation. And that's because geeks like to do their slide hacking like the hour before the presentation, or in James Bodie's case, where is James? Yeah, there he is, like the minute before the presentation, with no chance. But practicing is very, very important. I'm not just talking about the art of sitting and looking at your slide and thinking, yeah, I'll say that one when that slide comes up. That is not practice. Practice is doing your presentation out loud to a real-life audience, or if you can't get a real-life audience, do it to your cell phone, record yourself. Not only will you get an idea of the timing, but you'll find out if you stumble over any particular words or phrases, or if anything you want to say kind of comes out slightly goofy. That's what practicing is all about. Then there's participation. That's a very important one. Performance, that's the actual delivering of it. There's the dealing with nerves and things like that. And lastly, an oft-forgotten protocol is post-event. The presentation itself is actually part of an ecosystem. There's stuff that happens before it, there's stuff that happens during it, and of course there's stuff that needs to happen after a presentation, and so we have to give due time to that in the post-event protocol. So those are the 7 protocols. So now let's just dive into the main meat of the presentation and talk about GPS, Geek Presentation Sabotage. This is the 7 ways that geeks often sabotage their own presentation. And when I say sabotage, I mean not necessarily deliberately, but in one way or another, destroy, damage, or obstruct their own presentations. Here's the first one, too tech focused. So you're giving you're giving a presentation to a technical audience, and you tend to think that you've got to dump a load of technical stuff on them. They don't want that. Let me let you into a little secret. People really don't care how much you know until they know how much you care about them. You've got to be tuned into what they want. Your audience is all listening to one station. It's called WIIFM, or What's in It for Me? Obviously, isn't it? That's what we're all about. We're all tuned into how is this going to benefit me. So if you come out and feature dump or just do a load of code on the screen and stuff like that, that's not necessarily going to satisfy their requirements. So my top tip here is whatever technical level you were thinking of doing your presentation at, you may have even considered it. You might have think, yeah, I know how to code, but I'm going to give them flowchart level. Come up one level from that even and go to big block diagram level. Always come up at least one level from where you were thinking. And that way, there will be some technical people in the audience, and they can ask you questions at a deeper level, and you can answer them, but you're going to carry the majority of the audience with you if you come up at least one level. What's the next one, I hear you ask? No proper planning. Well, as you know, the FBI's 6 Ps, and that is proper planning prevents particularly poor performance. That's, by the way, a cleaned up version of that one. You can look on the internet, and there are other things. But you should always get into a little bit of a planning mode. Don't hack those slides. Do a little bit of planning. Ideas to consider, not only the content and the structure, and we already talked about attention spans. We already talked about first, last, all that kind of stuff. So the way you structure your content is very important, but the way you put your content across is very important. If you were talking to a collection of action-orientated people, you would probably give them something to do first before you told them about the concept. If you were giving a talk to a bunch of reflection-orientated people or input-orientated people, you'd probably tell them stuff first and then get them to do something to complete the learning cycle. I'm using terms that are within these protocols, and there's not time to go in them, but I'm going to point you to a free report at the end of it where you can get some more information. So remember the keys to memory as well. These are very important things. Then there's this one, isn't there? Lastminute.com. I'm sure a few people in the room this will resonate with. They tend to leave things till the very not the night before, not the flight before, but the hour before of a few seconds before. I see Steve casually looking in James Bodie's direction there. Failure to prepare is to prepare for a failure. You know, some of the time it might be okay, but other times there might be something that's outside of your control to deal with in the very short amount of time you left for a presentation. It's a little bit like leaving too late for the airport. 8 or 9 times out of 10 you might get there, but on the one there's going to be something that catches you, isn't there? So you really need to get in on it. And if a presentation is worth giving, it's worth properly preparing for. And actually, truthfully, if a presentation is worth giving, it's worth giving badly until you can give it well. In other words, it's worth practicing it to people and giving it badly until you can give it well. Because amateurs practice until they get it right, but professionals practice until they can't get it wrong. Okay, and my key idea is walk in your audience's shoes. So think about the audience, not just what they want from it, but how are they going to find their way to the presentation? Is that within your control? Is the signage right? There's all sorts of different things that you could think about in a presentation. Walk in your audience's shoes. And in fact, that reminds me of a key piece of information that I once heard from Jack Handey. You know the deep thoughts of Jack Handey in the US, do you? Well, let me reiterate one for you now. It was this. If you're going to criticize somebody, walk a mile in their shoes first. Because then, when you do criticize them, you'll be a mile away and have their shoes. Very deep thoughts from Jack Handey. Okay, what about practicing? Beta trialing. Software engineers don't mind beta trialing their software, do they? Oh, no. And of course, I'm sure there's no software engineers in this room at all that would ever put out some software to production that had not been properly tested. Of course not. No. So why is it people don't do it with their presentations? Why don't they alpha trial and beta trial their presentations? You really do need to get out there and do a little bit of practicing. I'm driving that one home. Okay, what do you think another key one is? That geeks put together presentations and they leave out the images. I like that one. Who said that? Oh, that was Fred. Fred, Twix. Oh, I see. That's called an assumptive close by Jared there. Just giving you the Twix before you'd even come out with it. Yes. Who else might a geek unwittingly leave out in the presentation? Audience. Who said audience? Well done, Andrew. That was the correct answer. In fact, Mike and Jared, can you both give Andrew a chocolate bar? So he gets one of each there. He's been a good guy. And do you see what I did there? I involved some audience participation because that is one of the criminal things that geeks do is they think they've got to give a presentation to or at the audience. Well, let me tell you about a very simple equation. Involvement equals commitment. The more you involve people in something, the more they'll commit to the outcomes. And so it's crucial to engage your audience. And it's not just a case of asking people questions, although questions are great. Questions are excellent, especially when combined with great eye contact. You see, the thing is, if you ask a question without eye contact, people don't think you're talking to them, and so they wait for other people to answer. But let me let you into a secret. If you use great eye contact and you ask questions, then people will always answer them. Are all questions always answered? Yes, they are, whether people verbalize the answer or not. And so if you combine great questions with great eye contact, you will find that you draw your audience in. But it's not just that. You can get people to show hands, can't you? You can say, how many people have ever seen a great presentation? Or how many people have ever put out some dire software in their lives? I saw a great one recently in America where a guy started the presentation by saying, if you believe in telekinesis, raise my hand. And then he went, David, stop that. So it's a great presentation. But audience participation, involvement in demonstrations. If you're going to demonstrate something, get people involved in doing it with you. Because people want things done with them, not to them, with them and for them. And, of course, you can get people to contribute their stories and experience. Anybody ever given a presentation where one person in particular keeps chipping in? Has that happened on the odd occasion? Yes. Now, sometimes that person might genuinely have your good at heart, but on the other hand, that person might be wanting the spotlight for themselves, mightn't they? They might want to be directing attention to them. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can use that to your advantage if you know how. If you're skilled in the art of drawing those people in and getting them to be a resource on your side rather than a thorn in your side, then that is the art there. So audience participation is very, very important. What about number 6? Oh, sorry, the idea. Brainstorm participation methods before you even start your slides. think about how can I involve my audience in what I'm doing. That will pay dividends. Okay, apathy. Yes, I'm just looking around the room, and I don't think we've lost anybody yet, which is a good thing. But do remember this, that the IASM at the end of enthusiasm stands for, anybody? Pretty good effort. Give Tori a chocolate bar of any description. It's I am sold myself. So, oh, yeah, careful, Randy. Careful. That's Randy trying to sabotage my presentation. I see what's going on here. All right, I'll carry on regardless. I think we're near the end. Okay, so I'd better go quickly. All right, so attitudes are catching. So you really need to check out whether you can be enthusiastic about the subject you've been asked to present on. That's a key thing. If you can't, you should go back to your boss and say, actually, I think there's probably somebody better to give this presentation than I am. Because there's a secret to presenting, and that is whoever's fault it is that something is not quite right in the presentation, it will all come down to you, the presenter, won't it? Doesn't matter whether it's the AV guys or your boss or whatever it is, it's all really down to you as far as the audience are concerned. So you need to feel ultra happy about what you're doing. Deal with nerves. I submit to you that if you go through those first 4 or 5 protocols, purpose, plan, prepare, practice, and consider participation, that will actually minimize your nerves right down to a very small level. That's not to say it will get rid of them all, but it will get rid of a lot of them. However, there's other nerves to deal with, and you know what it's like. An uneasy presenter makes for an uneasy audience, doesn't it? It kind of transmits into the audience, and they start feeling uneasy. Well, we go through ways of dealing with that in the performance protocol. I beg we try not to involve drugs, Steve. Take a chocolate bar away from... No, I'm only joking. Okay. One of the things that we can do is in our delivery, we can consider, if you notice all these begins with P, by the way, we can consider pitch, pace, and pauses in our projection. That's one of the things that we can do. And the idea here is to check yourself. Don't just think of yourself as a robot going out to make a presentation. Think about whether you are totally sold on the idea that you're trying to convey. Because if you're not, the audience is going to see that. Okay, last one. A failure to follow up. What did participants think of presentation? And I'm going beyond the happy sheet. Everybody has happy sheets at the end of presentations, don't they? Did you like it A, B, C, D, or 1 to 5, or all that kind of stuff? We need more than that. The presentation was given for some change of behavior or something else to happen. And so you need to go to the sponsor of the presentation after it, maybe it's a week after, maybe it's a month after, and say, did the change that you were looking to deliver, did that actually take place? So you do some kind of measurement. Are more presentations required? Does the same audience that you talk to need some more information, or does the same information that you already gave need to be given to other audiences? There are lots of things to consider in here. And the idea is schedule your follow-up before the presentation. So actually schedule with Daniel or whoever. Let's have a chat in a couple of weeks' time and see whether the objectives were achieved. Okay, so I said that those protocols would lead you to a place where you can open a wider connection with your audience, and I truly believe that's true. However, there's a secret weapon beyond all of those. All of those will contribute to what I'm about to reveal, but if you work on the single thing I'm about to reveal as a separate thing, that will be even better. And what it is when you line these things up in the way that I lined them up, you'll see a vertical word is spelt. What is it? It is rapport. You're quite right. I'm going to outline it in red. And the rapport is your broadband connection to your audience. The better rapport you can establish, maintain, and grow across a presentation or across a series of presentations, the more your audience will love and respect you. Okay, so I would like to summarize, but before I do, I think, Daniel, have we got time for a couple of questions? Okay, so any questions before I summarize the key points of this presentation? Oh, is that a none?
How much did it take for you to prepare this presentation?
Ah, how much did it take? Well, one of the dimensions I can give is the number of times I practiced it out loud, which was 3. I'd done another form of this presentation before, so I didn't need to go too far with it, but 3 real-life go-throughs of the presentation. And those revealed things that I needed to change as well. Okay. Does that answer your question, Corrado? Yeah. Give Corrado... Lion Bar or Twix, Corrado? Twix, okay.
I do have an important... Okay.
Okay.
Hi, you didn't mention timing, and I think that's an important part. I'm obviously it's part of the planning. How important do you think that is?
Well, there's lots of dimensions of timing. Do you mean the duration of the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. So the duration of the presentation is key. One of the things that you can do is actually divide your presentation up into mini presentations, thus buying yourself more firsts and more lasts. So you can use signposts in a presentation. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is this key point, and then you've got yourself a beginning and ending of that key point. Generally, you wouldn't want to go more than about 40 minutes in any presentation, but actually another key dimension of timing is the timing, the place where we deliver the presentation, is that relevant? So imagine if your boss asked you to deliver a presentation about a project you were doing. And you said, well, is this the right time to actually deliver it? And he'd say, oh, actually, now you mention it, no, because everybody's going on holiday for a month afterwards. So the actual when you deliver the presentation is just as important as the duration of the presentation. Both key points. In fact, give that man one of each chocolate, please, a Lion Bar and a Twix. Okay, Daniel, did you have a question?
Tim and myself ending, so...
So I have a question.
Sorry.
Is the book already printed?
No, the book is only 60% done. I'm hoping to have it finished
So does that mean there's room to slip in another P?
It may be. I like 7, but you might be able to persuade me to substitute
I wondered
one.
whether you thought about persona. So like who you are pitching yourself as. Like that, for me, that kind of makes a big difference.
That's a very good point that Tim's raised. And one of the things that I do say in the performance protocol is actually being in keeping with yourself, with your own persona, if you like. And I'll give you an example. Some years ago, I was teaching presentation skills to a large group of people, and one of them was a health and safety guy, and he wasn't naturally given to being in front of a group of people. He wasn't naturally given to large crowds or humour. And yet we were talking about great ways to start a presentation. This is what he came up with. I need to sit on the desk for it. But he started his presentation by being sat on the desk with his arms closed, his arms folded, and he said, okay, who'd like the afternoon off? And all these hands went up, and he went, in hospital. Because that's where you might end up if you don't listen to this presentation. And I thought that was excellent, and it fitted him with his persona. So that is a good P, Tim. Thank you very much. Have you been rewarded for that, by the way? Excellent.
Okay, so a quick one from us that we do this presentation. Do you plan to build a compiler so we can just run our slide deck and we get
like
okay
a parser,
or not?
Parse my presentation.
Or sort of a SaaS service, you know, we upload, we get, here you are bad, no, fail.
That could be a service later on, Daniel.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I just need to summarize if we're ready to go. Okay, all right, if we could have the presentation back on. All right, the summary is then that geeks that can speak rock in so many ways. And the confidence you will build up in being better at giving presentations doesn't stop in the room of the presentation. It rubs off into other areas of your life. It'll make you more confident in one-to-one communication, communication with members of the opposite sex, all sorts of things. Avoid the pitfalls that I've outlined by remembering the protocols. And the rewards are there for you to take. You don't have to be a mile in front to win a race. And this is really kind of the way I built my career. I went around America and lots of different places giving technical presentations, but just been a bit better than most of the other people that were giving technical presentations. And I wasn't a mile in front. I was perhaps an inch in front, but enough to be noticed and actually make a difference to people. So these are all there for you. And lastly, if you'd like a free report or to be told when the book's coming out, you can jump onto this website, letthegeekspeak.com/free report, and not only will you get the free report, but you will be on the list and you'll be notified when the book comes out. And by the way, the book has all kinds of things like self-assessment of the way you do your presentations at the moment and all that kind of stuff in there as well. Okay, so it's been a pleasure talking to you about why nerds need to be heard, why geeks need to speak, and why propeller heads need to propel ahead. It's been a pleasure describing these protocols to you, but most importantly, I know it'll be a pleasure for you to reap the rewards of being a geek that can speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Thank you.